Super.
And
Lou, this is a critical role that you're playing right now with the managing of technology.
Yes, I'm glad we're in your hands.
no pressure.
Yeah, right. No pressure.
Yeah, you have the role of presenter. Nobody shows as waiting status. So if you want to call the meeting to order, ask about whatever you need to ask about to officially follow protocol.
Okay, I think we just officially call the meeting to order at 4:05 and welcome all committee members with Paul Miller being absent. He has another commitment and he did let us know of that. So given that, everybody in favor, I assume, to start the meeting, correct? Okay, great. Everybody, sorry?
The meeting has been properly noticed.
Yeah, and the meeting has been noticed and you received, that's on the top of our agenda as well. Thank you, task force members, for being here. I hope now with a smaller group than we had the past time, we can get at some of our actual action items and action steps. Although our meeting last time, I think, was really a great conversation to bring the two committees together and really get energized and feel positive and have a little somewhat clearer picture of where we're headed with this work. So with that said, I'm just going to review what I was hoping we could discuss today, and it does follow the agenda. I'm going to start by giving you a quick update from the mayor. He sent me an email earlier with a few things perhaps will influence our conversation. And then I think we can do a very quick review of our survey, not at length per se, but to really hone in on and create a list. And I've got a screen share template that I think we can use on identifying community needs, because I believe we left our last meeting saying we were a conduit and we were that connectivity between learning what our community needs and then either sharing information or resources to meet those needs. So if we can really identify and make a list, I think that will be helpful. From that, the next two items, the action plan and the suggested resources for the website kind of go together. And I think in our conversation, we might meld those two ideas. Because in my notes from our last meeting, we did talk about the first big action item was getting a lot of information, hopefully on that website. So we'll pick up there. We will talk a little bit about communication plan, which overarches both subgroups as well as the larger committee. And I have an announcement from the mayor to share that will influence that as well. And then a reminder of our next task force meeting, which is a week from today at the same time with both committees. So we'll bring our work back together and keep this project moving. And then any other ideas that, that people would like to share. Everybody in agreement that will give us at least a good hour to have a conversation around? Great. I'm going to start then, with your permission, with another agenda item not noticed. It's just an update from the mayor, a couple things important to share. He shares that we hope to have a marketing intern hired and working for the task force and city no later than June 15th. We are interviewing now and plan to offer the position to somebody next week. 15 applicants, interviewing the top 4. And obviously this is significant because as we start producing, we're going to want a person in a place to help us populate the places that we want to share that information. So I think that's an important piece. Another piece is an answer to a question about school district information. And being that the school district, as you know, is the second largest employer in the school in the community, and everybody's asking about what's going to happen to their kids. The mayor met with Superintendent Rindo and also the newly elected board president, Rick Grotehouse, yesterday. Let's see, this is dated today. He says yesterday. To open communications and share ideas between the city and the school district. So I think communication that's more linked will be helpful. The school district will present on at the June 2nd meeting and give an update to the aldermen at the council so that those connections can be solidified a little bit. And then the rest were just some basic information things about upcoming city events and that. And I believe those things are on the website as well. So I think that helps us a bit, if you would agree. So to begin, I'm going to, if I can, share my screen now. Now I'll still be talking over the screen, right, Lou? Okay. Let's see if we get this. And I find it, oops. Okay, I'm going to leave it, I think, in this format so that I can add to it. I was wondering, and this really should be just an open conversation for all of us, if you would like to brainstorm and then hone in and make a solid list of what are those big community needs that we feel we learned through the survey and through the conversation with the other task force. Because I think we talked about this sort of hand in glove approach that, you know, the community and the citizens are asking. We have nonprofits and faith community that may also have needs, but are also very willing to support and provide service. And so this whole group really, again, is the conduit that connects that. But just to get us started, when we left off with the large meeting last week, I believe we were talking about community needs as identified through the survey. And they were things like a resource guide of nonprofits, to build a sense of community building, the verb, not the noun. Accurate information on safe openings, childcare information, school information, encouraging donors of where to donate, some questions about volunteers and where people might volunteer, and some questions about factual information more specific to our area. Now, I'm not suggesting that we own all of these. These might not all be nonprofits and faith community issues, but it's sort of a starting point for us to talk about creating this list of what are the urgent needs or long-term needs in our community, because then our work really has to link with that. So I'm just going to stop and let you kind of comment or share or share your recollection of where we left off and if this makes sense. Anybody?
Pat, you know me, I'm not, oh, Lou, are you muted?
Jason and Margaret are muted. You can control that yourself if you like, or I can unmute you.
May I say, why don't we, since there's only 5 of us, let's try and unmute everybody and see if we get feedback. And if we do, we can adjust a little, but let's see what happens. Then we can have a conversation, hopefully.
Yes. Everybody's currently unmuted.
Okay, you want to try something, Julie? Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention this does seem to depict the conversation that we had. I think as we look at the specific things that people may be coming to the website for that we are trying to share, for example, the resource guide for nonprofits, there may be some more detail, childcare being an example. You know, maybe there's a hunger issue, or the real human need or community needs might be even more specific than what this list depicts. And we may want to look a little deeper into that data to see if there are certain things that we want to be sure to flag in the nonprofit sector, for example, that would help people with things.
So are you saying if sharing resource and information, and particularly from nonprofits, is a way to meet the needs, we want to make sure we're going to cover things like urgent individual needs that I think people alluded to on the survey, but I still don't have that direct link of somebody saying, I have no place to live, what do I do? So, talk about that. That's where I'm a little unsure of how we would get those personal things.
Do we, can we provide, an in-person kiosk almost for members of the community to stop at if they need assistance, whether that be at City Hall, or the community center or the library? So let's say my utilities are being shut off, I no longer have internet, I no longer have my cell phone, so my communication options are limited. Before all that happens, we set up a help desk kiosk.
I heard two things. I heard help desk and kiosk. When you say kiosk, do you mean a physical place? I'm
Yeah,
just wondering, just off the top of my head, I wonder if it's an urgent, very personal need, if people are comfortable, would they just march in and show up and say, hey, I have no place to live? You know what I mean? So I think we're trying to get at this. How do we best get at it? Is it through a person to person and then we need people to be there all the time, or is it a digital service?
you do either, so if it was a help desk, if you showed up to the city hall right now and you went to the PD, there's somebody at that desk during normal work hours.
Do you know of any, Lou? I'm just trying to streamline it. Do you know of any current 24/7, sounds like the police department, access points whereby maybe would it be comfortable to direct people there and say for urgent or emergency personal needs, contact, and then would they know how to get in touch with us? Or
The PD is 24/7. There's somebody there 24/7. So if we put out a communication that anybody that picked up that phone there and said, hey, I have an issue for a task force, or I have a specific need, they can take that information down. Or once they get into that lobby, we could have a kiosk with a computer set up so they could enter in information, again, relatively anonymously, and say, this is what I'm looking for, and it electronically transmits. It could be either or.
and again, wondering how would we make sure if we're going to, I don't even know if we're able to access the police department on that, but how would we make sure that we're directing, the people know that's for urgent, kind of what emergency personal needs, not, oh, where do I find the list, if my baseball team is practicing?
Make
Margaret?
a,
Or,
I just want to maybe I feel like we're kind of focusing on needs right now. Task Force is nonprofit, correct? I think that have services know that we need to figure out the logistics of assisting the community, because I would imagine that that's something the community is assisting on. So before we get to the detail of it, clarify if that is the correct understanding. Should we be focusing on about who are our nonprofits, what are their needs, and what services do they have to offer that we can pass that information to the community team?
anybody?
Margaret, I think you're right on. I don't know if maybe that's a two-part equation, because once you figure out who does what, then how to connect them to who needs what. And that's what I took from Pat. So
I think then the problem we want to solve is how do we create and increase awareness within the community of the incredible nonprofits we have and those who are still functioning at a high level during a time of pandemic and creating awareness. If you need help with problem X, here's a nonprofit that can help if you have a problem with Y. And I think we can do that through the Oconomowoc Responds website. I was astonished to see the sheer number of nonprofits we have in our community. I didn't even know there were that many. So I think what we want to focus on is awareness and be that conduit you're talking about, Pat.
And I think that will help us clarify, because I think I agree, because as we know, we're getting into it and it's this large and we want to help everybody, but the best way to do it is what we really have to define. You're right, our charge is nonprofits. And so using nonprofit as the vehicle, if you will, to meet individual needs as well as more broad scale community needs is kind of what I'm hearing. Just to look in the next section here, just to kind of, this is multidimensional, but I did speak with Julie a little earlier today from a communication and a strategy perspective about if our role is to create this resource guide, because we keep coming back with this. So rather than just putting out a list, even though that's better than anything that exists right now, would we create a format on the city page whereby when we collect the information, it would populate the city page and we could decide what those categories might be? And that's this second chunk right here. So for example, obviously the nonprofit's name and maybe a 50-word description of what they do. But we could also start listing, if you think kind of how a spreadsheet works, we could start listing categories such as needs volunteers, donate here, whatever, where if they fill out that information, it could populate this directory. So now if I'm a community member and I'm saying, I really want to volunteer somewhere and I don't even know where to start, could this become a vehicle and could be sorted in a variety of ways where maybe there's categories? So when you go into the page, you first see all the nonprofits, but maybe because the way we've set it up and we've asked if they need volunteers, maybe there's a way if you click, I want to volunteer, it opens though, or it gives you those pages again. Or if you say, I want to donate, it would open those pages again. Or I'm, like I say, I'm a family member and I'm afraid my housing is in jeopardy. So maybe they would be looking for more specific information. But that's how this first list of creating this resource guide, which could be a big enough chunk for our conversation today, and then discussing these categories, and then maybe we could work with the city, Bob, and with the IT person to see what format this could be placed in. I did notice over the last couple of days, and I apologize, I don't know how long it's been there, but there is under the Oconomowoc Responds tab and page, there is now a new section called City Facility and Community Services. And when you click there, it lists all the city posts, like a little bit of what's open, what's closed, what's the procedure, the more city type communications. But keying off of that and the way that looks, we might be able to have, or I guess I'm asking, should we have this nonprofit directory? And then what would we want in it and how would we organize it? Because then I think collecting that information, but doing it, rather than old school calling and asking, what would you like? If we can get this set up in a digital format with the city, where if they fill out a form, I don't even know if this is possible, but if it could populate the website, or at least come back in a format for us that would be easy to place in the website. Is that kind of how you see us doing this work and creating this community guide? What are your thoughts on that?
What- I'm kind of brainstorming as I go along.
Yeah.
Looking for some nonprofit resources to assist me. What are some categories of needs I might have? It means like assistance, childcare assistance, housing assistance, spiritual assistance, in assistance, kind of like community socialization. That are in this sense of still cautious. Um, and categories, and obviously that I'll brainstorm to start with, and then to get involved and want to donate, they might have an okay, if I donate money, I really want to help people who need food assistance, or so I'll drill down on categories, and then in there offer like donate to them in those categories. That's just kind of my initial thought on it.
I agree, and I think we want to create it in a way where we don't accidentally become a middleman that slows everything down.
Yeah.
We want to connect both people who need help and people who want to help directly with these organizations and stay out of the way because we'll slow everything down.
Yeah, and we don't need to create a whole other link. Nothing has to go through us. We just have to we're the conduit. We just have to get it set up. So far as this capturing, if we create this guide, it would have an agency name and description, but it sounds like some of the areas that are bubbling up there could be a section on assistance, food, shelter, spiritual, emotional. Were there others that I missed, Margaret? We can flesh that out.
Like
Maybe financial.
Yeah, I'm just
Physical.
I was going through the data while we were talking here in terms of the areas that were of the greatest concern and the people, what people said their highest priority would be. And I was thinking if we tie to that, nobody can argue, that, I mean, we're delving this from the community's input, but the number one top priority in the number one category in our data was assistance with access to technology. The number two was access to social services supports, including food and shelter. Okay, I'm misspeaking in the order, but over 50% of people thought that the access to social services, child care, and official guidance on how Oconomowoc in the area will reopen were the three, were the second through the fourth in the priority list. Let's see, what else? Affordable food, 43% said affordable food was their number one priority.
Physical.
And then if you considered, if we wanted to add the first two priorities or, look at the total, the biggest, I would have to do the calculating, but I was just doing that for the other concerns as well. Like 72% of people were very concerned or concerned about job loss. 63% were concerned about or very concerned about mental health.
Right.
Substance use and abuse was over 50% concerned. So there may be a way for us to look at those categories and consider if people are, and ask the nonprofits to check a box or something if they had help or some affiliation to those issues, and perhaps that's a way to help people identify the needs or, the places they can get help.
And the reason that, just from my way of thinking of organizing, if we're trying to meet, I think, kind of serve two masters, if you will, in that when we list a nonprofit, it's what do they need so we can help them. They might need donations and volunteers, but also communicating what they offer, because then we're meeting the need of the people in the community. So do we still believe that one posting of an agency, so like if you're the food pantry or you're Al-Anon or whatever, and you're listed, and then there's this 50-word description of who you are, what you do, and then we have categories that they can click. I was thinking that we also need some way then for those categories to populate a new list. Oh, excuse me. So that if I'm logging in because I have a substance abuse issue, I don't want to look through every nonprofit. I want to go to the section where it says substance abuse and see the list of resources I might be able to, that would then take me to their page. Do you know what I'm saying?
Main
I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Sorry, I got to turn that off. Sorry, it is my two grandchildren who want to Zoom. Sorry, I didn't have that turned off. Anyway. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mark. I didn't hear you.
Margaret, I'm so sorry, but I'm having a hard time. Is anyone else having a hard time hearing Margaret?
Yeah.
I can't hear it either.
Sorry.
Maybe mute the rest of us, Lou, and see if it's better.
I think it's a bandwidth issue, but we can try.
Okay, try it. Now she's muted. There you go.
hear me?
Kind of broken up. Is there any work around that, Lou, or what are? Let's see if did anything come in the chat? I've got this window.
Yeah. Margaret, if you could, can you hear me? Can you nod? Oh, she fell off.
Okay. All right, let's see what happens. Maybe she's going to try and log back in.
Yeah, I was gonna recommend that maybe she try not doing the video because I think the bandwidth
Okay.
is having an issue.
While we're waiting for Margaret to jump back on, can I just ask a question on charter? Is our charter to serve and support and help the nonprofits and churches of our community or the citizens of our community?
Both, I think.
Because isn't there another group working on the citizen piece?
There is a group working on citizens, but so are we clarifying then? And I think that was the point earlier about maybe not getting in so deep to meeting individual needs, but again, pushing out. Well, meeting the needs of nonprofits is one, but also sharing the information so that nonprofits can meet community individual needs, I think, is our connect to the other group.
I just want I just want for myself to be crystal clear on, to use a business term, who is the customer, our customer in this subgroup.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're concerned about the citizens of Oconomowoc at the end of the day. Right. But what narrow aspect are we focusing on? And that's how we're contributing to the whole. That's my question.
And my understanding is nonprofits and faith community, but most specifically what they need and what they offer. That's what we
Okay.
did in this survey. So yes, you're right. I think we have to keep coming back to that big overarching idea. It's all about nonprofits, but it's that two-way of how do we help them get what they want? And that's how I think we got in a little of the conversation about encouraging people to donate or encouraging people to volunteer, but then helping publicize what they do and what they offer so that we can get that information out to the community.
Yeah, so when I look down what the nonprofits report, the number one biggest concern that jumped out to me was finances.
Yeah. Okay.
So I like where you were headed, Pat, of building whatever platform we can for these nonprofits to get their message out, because there are a lot of people who want to help.
Yep.
And if we can give them that platform, man, let's connect people who want to help to these nonprofits that are doing amazing work.
Right. So is the platform these kinds of categories? Is this what would go in the platform? The platform is on the city page, right? I'm just trying to get a picture. And then,
I think,
go ahead.
I mean, there's a lot of them have to do with, and not just these, but also just building community and
Mhm.
enriching lives. A lot of the nonprofits I'm looking at have to do with building community and enriching lives.
And I keep going back to, and how do people know that?
Right.
That was when the conversation of the kiosk or the help desk was brought in, because if I don't have technology and I don't get to the website, where else can I go? That may become an issue. So if we set up something like that, or if our faith community provides a weekly update during services, hey, this is the task force update in regards to nonprofits. If you need to go someplace for food, if you need, all this is, here's where you go, and we can help you connect to the nonprofits through the faith community. That might be
So,
another part of the platform.
and I'm wondering when you say kiosk, you mean maybe a computer, not necessarily a person?
Correct.
Okay.
It could
So
be one
I
or the
apologize, I
other.
misunderstood. I kind of went off on, oh, is it going to be a person? And how would we ever manage that? So you're saying more like access to computers, because people did ask about access to technology. So we could maybe have that available in multiple. So the question is, where can you have public access to a computer? Is that what we're saying?
Access nonprofits, right? To access the task force.
Well, access this directory that we would create, right? So that, and if we get it set up where it's this multi-layered, let's say, I'm gung ho about the free clinic and I want to donate money. How do I do that? Then I know I want to go and look at the free clinic and it's going to tell me there what I need. But likewise, if I'm walking in and thinking, oh my gosh, I lost my insurance, I lost my job, I need health care, where do I even start? The same platform should allow me to put in, I need help with, maybe that's it. Maybe the entry point is you log in as I need help with, or I need, I don't know, we'd have to find out from technology how that works. But you know what I'm saying? We're trying to have two users kind of. I want to
Do
support.
I have volume again? Are you
Yes.
guys able to hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. I do feel, I see what you guys are talking about and focusing on. Again, I feel like those are probably tasks that the community group would be figuring out those items. I see us as providing the organizations and what they do, like you were saying earlier, Pat. I almost wonder, do we task and I think they've already been tasked with it, but to avoid replicating efforts, do we ask the community group to provide us with what are the top 10 community? What are their categories for their needs? And then we create some kind of a survey that can go out to the nonprofits saying, of these categories, which ones do you serve? And what resources do you have? What needs do you have to provide these resources? You know, do you need funding? Do you need volunteers? And are there any additional resources that your organization provides? And then in addition to that, they can provide like that 50-word summary, but that we're just kind of collecting the resources. Right. And then we would provide those resources to community for them to do what's appropriate with those to get them out to the community. But I don't think we need to task ourselves with getting that out to the community. I think we need to gather the resources and determine what the nonprofits' needs are in order to provide those resources. Or do they have needs outside of those resources just in terms of their general funding? Or did they have a major fundraiser that got canceled because of the pandemic? Do they have something upcoming? Do they need resources? Pat, I had actually, right before we got onto our meeting, I had sent you an email. The Biz Times Media is offering and it's really short notice, but it's tomorrow, they're offering a webinar for nonprofits on kind of like the new nonprofit world in the midst of this pandemic. And so is there a way that we could quickly like shoot that out to our nonprofits and say, hey, sorry for the short notice, but this is a resource that might benefit you. And hopefully we can accumulate more resources like that. Maybe it's a playback thing that they can access after the fact. But again,
that's something that could go on the Facebook page, maybe, Margaret. Like we could.
Oh, I'm sure it could.
See it on Facebook, they might share it with people. I would think quick response wise, that might be the best place to put it.
Well, we do have that list that we use to send the survey. And, you know, so again, just simple as copying all those emails in again and just pushing that out there. I mean, I could do that when we're finished even. If you send it to me, I can just.
Or maybe putting it on the
and put it on. Yeah.
And hopefully there'll be a playback to it so people could watch the recorded after the fact. I'm not sure what information will even be in there. Maybe it won't be beneficial to anybody, but it's just but I think we're walking this really fine line of collecting what the resources and opportunities are, and then handing that off to the community team.
Okay. So are we saying, it seems like we're crystallizing a little bit that while we explored some of these needs, our main goal right now is to really create action around this number one, this resource guide. And that's
really
our job.
Do we get the list of needs from the community team? You know, they're probably pouring through their survey even in more depth than we are looking at their survey, and they have most likely created like a top 10 list, if you will, of what the community needs are. I would think that we could then just survey the nonprofits and say, which of these areas do you serve, and which additional areas do you serve? And then if there's a way on the website, and I'm not in, I don't know how to do this, but you know, if somebody can run a query and filter in, like, you know, say, I'm interested in these 3 categories, show me all the organizations that provide that resource, or show me all the organizations I can volunteer for or donate to that would provide that resource.
So focusing on this number one, but rather than, see, they have the same, we all have the same data. So maybe they create the list, we use that list, but our main responsibility right now, our action right now is this resource guide and getting it, because getting it organized is really the work on the front end. So, and that was this part. So once we get the list from the citizens group, it would tell us which areas we'd be asking them, and that would populate this guide, which I think we're saying, for lack of a better term, I'm not IT either, but a searchable type, whether, you know, where you put in either what you're looking for, or maybe the page is set up based on whatever these 6 to 10 top needs are. And there's a intro that lists all the nonprofits with their logo and their information. But then all of these needs as they're listed, maybe all the names of those nonprofits, the links populate. So if it's food, if it's finance, if it's shelter, if it's childcare, you also can look at it that way. Does that make sense or?
I mean, and it could even be as simple as a chart on that website, listing on one side the organizations, and then over the top, it would show the different categories of need, and then just an X under each category if that organization
People
provides
could look like
simple. And then on
Yeah.
the list of organizations, you would just click on that organization, and it would take you to either their website or it take you to another page. These are the different things.
Okay.
I think one of the things to keep in mind is if we identify what we're trying to do and the information that we feel is most important, I think the technology people can help us.
Yeah. Design it.
And I don't know that we necessarily can design around what's possible on the website, but it sounds like what we want to do is gather some consistent information about the groups, the nonprofits, and I did put the survey results, some of the stuff from the data into the chat just to show. I kind of highlighted the key things in order according to the concerns and the priorities that were expressed. So that might be a starting point if we want to consider what we want to ask nonprofits for. I agree with you, Margaret, though. We need to hear from the the community. But I think if we focus on the survey or whatever they've identified, then we know that that's what we've heard, and then maybe create some sort of a form that organizes that information so that whoever submits information can identify where they could fit. And also maybe, to your point, Pat, the volunteers and donations piece, those could be things that if they check the box, then we put maybe an icon next to it on the website, or that kind
Well,
of
if it is a chart, so that if I'm understanding right, the only part that would be active, so to speak, would be the community, the name of the organization, which links them to either their page. See, it could link back to their page, or if they don't have one, some kind of contact. But if I'm looking, all I have to do now is look at this one chart, and I would see columns that would be checked, if I'm understanding, Margaret, checked: food, shelter, spiritual, childcare, need donations, need volunteers. So I could just scan through that chart quickly. And if I was interested, then I would just go back and click on that agency, right?
Right now, we can probably just focus on gathering the information. We can put it in a format, maybe put it in that chart format in a spreadsheet, and then talk to whoever IT when that time comes, when we get to that point, and share that information with them, and they can determine the best way to present that on the website. I don't know that we have to probably figure that out right now.
Well, but the only reason I was wondering, and why it might be worth an IT conversation first, was if the form that they're filling out is already linked, and I don't know if that's the right term, to the format that's going to be on the website, then we don't have to repackage all that information. That was my question. So like,
yeah, and I don't know that we'd have to like repackage it, but just if we put our information into a spreadsheet as we gather it,
right?
I think that would be, because somehow we have to gather the information ourselves and have some way of saying like this organization addresses these needs. So we need some format of our own to put it in just to start.
Hey Lou, have you done anything with the city website? Are you familiar at all with how that works? Or because there may be an online form that could be built, Margaret, that could pull, you know, if we create the data that we want and people type it into the form, it could automate into a spreadsheet.
If we provide the information in the flow that you want to see, that can be built. I wouldn't worry about the detail of how it's built, but if you say this is what the organization is, this is what they provide, this is how I want to see this clip, we'll get that taken care of.
The other thing that might be an easy, you know, I think we want it to be as painless as possible for everybody. You know, we want to make it easy for the nonprofits to say, okay, what are you going to say about yourself? What are the services? You know, what is the link to finding more information? Or Lou, I know you were saying before people might want to get a customized feed. Maybe we can ask the question, do you have a newsletter or some sort of an email list that people could sign up for, and then they could do, you know, some of that kind of stuff. Those might be some questions we could ask, and then if it's a question of these categories, for example, you know, maybe there's a cover page, a starting point that says, you know, what is your concern or what do you need, and then we have these categories. The categories go back to a column on the spreadsheet. It could be that we could have the category of job loss or job, you know, needs, and then all the nonprofits or all the agencies that might help could be in a list underneath that people could explore. I don't, you know, it's kind of hard to imagine how it's all supposed to be, but I think we want it to be easy and as automated as possible so that people can spend their time on valuable, you know, activities.
So I guess,
Jason, what do you guys do?
Margaret, it's starting to get a little choppy again with your with hearing you. When you are looking to insert, if you could try to minimize or pull out of your video, because I think it's a bandwidth issue that's creating that choppy voice. It might help. It's just an idea. Okay, so your video's gone. That's cool. Can you try talking? Maybe that's not as choppy then. Hi.
Can she hear you? Can you hear us, Margaret? I think we might have lost the sound too, no? I don't hear anything. Okay. Now we can. Okay, while we're waiting, okay. You want to try it again? While we're waiting, can everybody hear me? Okay, we'll just summarize that this committee is really going to focus tightly on this number one right here. Creating a resource, that's our first project, creating a resource guide of nonprofits. And I don't even know if this is even necessary, but this is really our key one because it addresses these other things. Creating this, which is our charge, helps us get at these. But we will be wanting a list of the community needs from the citizen community committee. And that's what we will build our nonprofit response guide, however we collect it, whether we email everyone, whether we divide up and phone, whatever we do, or whether we work with the city to create something that directly links into, I don't know yet. We'll have to see what the format will be. But those would then become the categories, correct? That we're asking them in addition to, do they have a newsletter available? Do they need donations and do they need volunteers? Is that where we are?
I think that's where we are. We also have a charter to help the faith-based communities as well.
Okay. And so, Jason, are these same things applicable? I mean, if we create it where you check, like some churches might have a food pantry. Obviously, they're all going to have spiritual something, but some might have a food pantry. Some might be able to assist with shelter. So is the same list going to work for both?
I think it will, but when I look at the data points that we received, the the only request for help I saw from the churches was we just want to reopen again,
Right.
which we can't do anything about, and I guess it's already done anyway. So I mean, so maybe it's just again increase awareness of what they can offer people, so that people who say, "Yeah, that's what I want to be a part of," can go and help with that.
Okay. And I don't know if we have any way of knowing if it would change drastically, but remember our survey was out and back before
Yep.
the Supreme Court ruling. So maybe people have answers to some of the things they were anxious about. And now we're looking for more, we have the residual effect of still food and jobs and finances and et cetera. And so if the faith community and nonprofits would all check the same categories that were up here, we could use the same gathering format for both. Is that what we're saying?
I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Hey, Pat, wasn't there a fairly limited number of nonprofit responses to the survey? Wasn't it just like half a dozen or something, or did I misspeak that?
No, I think were there 20? I'd have to go back and look at the number. 2021, I believe. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
Well, I guess it makes me wonder if there's anything specific to that community that would warrant phone calls, like a follow-up survey of sorts where we could maybe gather some consistent information, but get a better sense of that since it's a little different.
Well, I wonder if when we get this, if we could quickly get this format, what we're actually going to be asking them. And then if we'd be willing to divide up that list and call them and tell them to watch for this email and that we really need their information that we'll be, posting it or whatever. Do you think that would be helpful, or do you think we need to send it out and then talk to them after it's been sent? Or I do agree that I think a personal contact would be really important. What are your thoughts on that? Or how would we can, the six of us can divide up that list if that's what we're interested in doing. Is that what you had in mind, or should we get this organized and send it out quickly and see what we get back, and then all the ones that we didn't receive back, we could do that.
I guess my only concern would be that it may not be meeting the needs of the faith community if their whole goal is to have a chance to, connect with their communities again. I don't know, Jason, is there another chapter of this form that should be created for the faith-based community needs in particular?
Um, I don't know that there is, Julie, because it was a pretty open forum where they said over the next, several months, what do you think your biggest needs will be? And it was still limited primarily to the ability to gather. And I think one respondent said we have financial concerns over the long term, which surprised me. I thought that'd be higher for churches. Churches aren't notorious for running with a lot of financial margin, but that didn't seem to be a concern right now.
So are we saying that even though we want to, is it not our responsibility to meet the needs of the churches as much as it is to share and promote what they offer, like food pantries and et cetera? Or where's the sweet spot there, I guess?
Here, let me just speak frankly. With churches, it's an interesting nonprofit model of sustainability that doesn't match and align with other nonprofits. So a church desires to serve people and meet needs, primarily of a spiritual nature, but then part of that is discipling people to love your neighbor as yourselves. Therefore, needs in the community are met through local churches. In fact, it's one of the most organic ways to meet needs within the community. So most churches will be best served if they feel like they have the opportunities to serve more people. Ironically, that's also the financial engine of the nonprofit aspect of the church. The more people you can serve and help, generally the more financial revenue you're going to have, which allows you to serve and help more people. So if I were to ask this question directly to the faith-based communities in Oconomowoc, I'm pretty sure the answer would be the best way you can help us is let people know how we're helping people because that'll help us help more people.
So then are you saying asking them back to this list sorry, that we've started to just brainstorm, but that we're going to really fine tune based on the citizen group input, a church could check off these boxes?
Yeah, I think if you really want to get granular, um, ask the churches what are the top two or three things you can do to help people during this time besides having church on Sunday. We know you already do that. And you'll get some unique responses in that way. And I think that's if we can communicate that and then we can share that with the community team. Hey, here's what these churches can do to help members of our community. That's probably the best way we can help the churches.
And would we have them check off these type of boxes, but then also ask them to expand a little bit on what you just said in their like 50-word description of themselves? Or how would we get it? I mean, because I don't think we want a long list of things that aren't connected to something.
We only had 9 responses. I think we just asked them all, what are the top 3 unique things you can do to help? We'll see how they fall in line with these pretty quickly.
Okay. And we still would post and we still would get a little 50-word description of who they are or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they would, okay, but is it, I guess I have to ask this honest question. Is it our responsibility as a committee to also meet their needs? Like, do we, in addition to their top 3 of how they serve community, do we also put things like, do they need volunteers? Do they need donations? Do they have a newsletter? I mean, in a way, that could be how they get new members. Is that our role?
I mean, you have to walk a fine line here.
I know.
Right, that's a challenge, isn't it?
I'm going to go back to the survey results. I don't see needs pop in the survey results.
Yeah. It seems like if we set this up, well, I think we've said, if we set up these categories based on the survey needs, or the needs identified in the survey, any group, nonprofit or church that meets those needs would be listed there.
Yeah, just treat them indiscriminately.
that what we're saying, right? So if you can check off, yes, we have a, we have a food pantry, or yes, we have a, you know, daycare right within our church. They would check those things off, right? And because those categories, I think we're trying to be careful with this fine line, but if we base it on what came out of the survey, then we are the conduit of saying, okay, this church says they do this, this, and this, and these were three things that were asked for by the community. So we're just providing information. We're not promoting, encouraging, endorsing any one agency over another. Is that correct?
Well, I'm a pastor. I'll let everyone else speak to this.
Everybody should speak.
Lou, you've been awful quiet over there. What do you have to say?
I am just soaking it in. For me, I think our faith community, our churches, Jason, to your point, need back in touch with their flock. Now that's available, the churches are an incredible platform for communication to their flock in regards to what is available, what is going on, how it can help. Be beyond the city. That is going to be probably the primary place that people look for help. I'd almost think that more people than not will look to their church before they look to the city for help.
So are we saying then that if we, to keep going back and reiterating, if we do a good job of creating this resource guide and we base it off of the needs of the community and we let churches share that with their members, are we then helping them meet their mission of serving their members and sharing information? So I just keep going back to, is this guide the thing that is the answer to many of our issues?
Potentially, Jason, maybe you can confirm or enhance this. If you, as Hope Church, provide these resources and this engagement opportunity in a dynamic way that provides great value to your flock, that value has multiple benefits to those people that look to you from satisfying those needs, and those who can give will help support Hope Church or whatever faith organization is getting that information out, because they want to see that continue. So there's a multiple benefit to looking at the churches as the closest part that we have to our community and those needs, getting that guide out. But we'll look to the faith community to really tweak that and enhance that to build that value quickly. Because if you're, Jason, am I kind of on there?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a more relationally rooted way that people are helped practically.
So to me,
I genuinely believe it's the most organic way to meet needs in a community.
are you guys able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, all right, sorry about that. Just to make sure that we are, Pat, I keep hearing you ask, what is our responsibility to provide assistance to the nonprofits? I definitely agree with Jason that, through kind of stewardship is how churches will benefit through all of this. But we also have some nonprofits, for example, the Lake Area Free Clinic, that are very different than churches, and they're going to need assistance, definitely financial assistance. They probably need volunteers. So in addition, if we're sending out this survey, in addition to asking, what resources they have for assistance and engagement, or resources for assistance and opportunities for engagement, do we ask them, in addition, what do you have needs that you need help meeting? I think we just include that in the survey. And even if it means that the vast majority say, no, we're fine, we've at least included that so that they can let us know if there is something they need assistance with.
In addition to so there'd be an open-ended, and we would maybe do that for all of them, right? But would they still be checking off these categories that we hone in
Yeah.
from this citizen group?
I really like the idea of utilizing the categories, because then we have some kind of uniform information.
Mhm.
And then in addition to that, I really liked what Jason had to say of, like, what are two of the, like, I don't recall the words that you used, Jason, but something to the effect of, like, what are your top two things that you do to serve the community, or what are the top two things you could do to help? I love that open-ended question, because it allows them to really personalize their information. And then we ask them the question of, in addition to the, the assistance you can offer or the opportunities for engagement, what are areas where you could use help, either from our organization, from Oconomowoc Response, or from our community? And I'm guessing a lot of them will say, if people want to donate, this is a way they can donate. Or maybe that's something we include in there. If you're in need of donations, what is the best way for people to donate? If you're in need of volunteers, what is the best way for volunteers to engage? Like, who should they contact? Or is there a link on your website? I don't want to get too specific, because, like somebody had mentioned before, we don't want to become that middleman of having to direct people, but just to get uniform information, especially if we're going to provide this to somebody who's going to set up a web page for it, I think having it be as uniform as possible is going to make it as user-friendly as possible.
Right, and that's the purpose for these categories, again. So,
but I also,
it makes us give some validity too, that we're basing this off of. We're asking now, how do you meet these needs?
Yeah.
But
I do like Jason's idea of, like, what are your top two things or unique things that you have to offer? I love that idea.
But are they in addition to these
personality too? It allows for that uniqueness. I think we should ask that of everybody, not just churches, but everybody, because that could be the core of their message, of their 50-word description, and people can go to their website, for more details if they so chose.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that too. Where I'm stuck, to be honest, is I don't understand why we'd ask what their top areas are if we just gave them a bunch of things to check off. Or do you want them to elaborate on them a little?
Or do we ask them, are there additional areas?
Yeah, I think maybe that's where I was stuck. And that can go in one open-ended, but we also, maybe when we get the description, maybe part of it is some prompts are, describe what you offer that makes you unique, or what your top areas that you do offer, and put that up in their description. Because then back to this, being able to manage all this when it comes back, if what's specific to them is just an open-ended question, we're going to end up with an assorted list. But if we have them respond to categories and describe themselves in this 50-word thing by listing their top areas or what makes them unique, is that kind of what we're saying? Does that kind of?
I like that idea, is giving that as guidance for their description.
Mm-hmm.
That way we have a place for it to be located, and everybody's got the same space to work with, instead of a lot of add-on comments.
So right out front, if I'm new, and I mean, who knows? I mean, I think we assume people are attached to faith communities, but let's say people are looking because they aren't. And so now I want to learn a little, I want to find a church. So we want a little description, and we want that up front to show. And then in addition, showing what services they offer, and that two-way, how we can support them as well. And that would be universal for churches as well as nonprofits. Is that where we are?
I think
that sounds good.
Okay.
A couple things I think we should be thinking of, and Lou kind of, I think we need to make sure that we've addressed any gaps too. For example, our survey may not cover every topic that we know is a critical need. Domestic abuse, child abuse, some of these things that people don't want to talk about, or they may not, but that we know statistically are, there are increases, and we know that our nonprofits and maybe faith communities have helped for this. So I think we may want to consider, and that may come out in the top things that people can help with, or these nonprofits can help with. But anyway, I think, maybe we need to read between the lines a little bit. We've got substance use and abuse on our survey, but maybe we didn't ask about some of the things that people really need. So just something to keep in mind. And if it would be helpful, I've been taking a lot of notes here. I could take a first pass at the survey questions and share it with the group, and people can see what we think, and just, edit whatever, make suggestions.
I think that would be good. We're going to want, are we still wanting that list of needs though from the other committee? Because I thought we said we had to base our list and our questions off of those needs. Or is this in addition to?
Could we base it on the survey that was sent out? Because I think the survey had categories in it already, didn't it?
It did, and that's what I put in the chat, was there were a few things that came up as priorities, so we could start there, and the community group could, we could edit once we got stuff back from them.
I think it just, to keep this moving, if we could, I think we should try and take our best thinking and make this thing and make the list, and then let the community group look at it and say, did we miss anything? As opposed to having them generate, we're still going off of the survey, but I think if we have to wait for them to generate it, I think it's going to bog us down a little bit. What do you think? So to Julie's point, if we took, kind of some of the things we started with right here and the survey categories and built that out, and then put our lead questions for how they write their narrative and an open-ended if we want at the end, I think we could create that. And maybe then we all take a look at it just via a doc or something, or an email. And then if it's good, maybe the next step is to talk with the city IT and just say, do we need to think this through on the front end, or should we go collect this, and as long as it's organized in the categories, will you be able to post this for us? How does that sound?
I think that sounds great.
Because then I think we could keep this moving, and maybe by next Thursday when we're all together, we could say, here's the category, here's what we're doing. Or maybe we have it almost good to go, and then we say, and get it out to Jason ahead and just say, are we missing anything? Or he can ask his committee, so that by when we're all together on Thursday, we can say, we're ready to start collecting this from our community, and the city knows that this is coming and we need this to appear on the page.
I think I really would want to talk to someone about the possibility of this being done in an online form that automatically is populated into a spreadsheet, because that would save a lot of work, that we don't necessarily have people to do.
We can definitely use, a Google form would be a really easy thing to do. I'm just not sure if the city has any restrictions. Lou, you might be able to talk to that effect of, are we restricted in what online resources we can use for this task force?
I think maybe, are there two things though, like Google Forms for us for the task, or some form for us for the task force?
Yeah, for us sending out the survey. Yeah. Is that what you're asking about, Julie?
But you're asking, Julie, more something that would come out and would link right into the city format that we've created.
I guess it could be like a Survey Monkey. I think our goal is to figure out the easiest way to provide input and then get the data back out so that whatever the results are can be easily used in the, in the website. And so I guess what I was thinking of originally was if it's on our website and if the link to a form that is built as part of the website is a place that we send people, then it shows the work that we've done and the connectivity to the, to this group. But then it might already be in there in the appropriate format to be useful and easy to manipulate into the final product that we want on the site. So, I was just trying to reduce the number of steps if there's a way to do that.
If that were all set up so it was more streamlined, then what we could do, we could make these personal calls to these organizations and explain and really invite them and explain and then tell them how important this is and direct them and just tell them all you have to do is click on this link and fill out this form for us, and we will be able to upload your information on the city page.
To your question in regards to the technology part of it, surveys, things of that nature, that's all they are, is a link to another tool. So whether we want to do SurveyMonkey or whatever that is, I would suggest that we create the flow and the way that we want that to look and feel, and say make that happen, and they'll do that. And they'll put the link on the website and they'll take care of all that.
And then they'll know that when this stuff starts because we can make our personal, more relational connections then, but when the information comes in, we don't have to keep handling it and sending it somewhere. Right. It'll go into the city and they know then where it's going to populate. So that's what you're saying, Lou. On the front end, we could set it up that way, have them create the form once we, through our conversation, agree on that form.
Correct. So like if we create the category, the drop down, this is kind of what we are looking to out there, they'll populate it in whatever tool that ultimately will end up as a link on the website. And that makes it the official city task force tool.
Okay, so a couple things. It's approaching 5:30, so I just want to do a couple things. We are focusing on creating this resource guide. That's our goal in delivering on our responsibility. And we're going to create a consistent form that includes all the things we just talked about that came off of, that we learned from our survey, in addition to an open-ended question and a narrated description of their organization. And we're going to find kind of a high-techy way to get this and to get it into the city. And we might decide to still make personal contacts with these organizations. And then, are there any other issues you want to talk about now, or should we focus on getting this up and running? And I can, Margaret, to your point, I can grab that email you sent. I haven't looked at it yet. And if you don't mind, I'll just send it out to the email list I used for the survey.
That would be outstanding if you're able to.
Sure, I'll just get that out now. That'll just be a forward and I'll just drop that in. So, yeah, great.
If you want, I can post it on the Facebook page if you want to send it to me, Pat.
Yeah, perfect. I'll send it right after I get off here. So I think we need to wrap up two things. Are there other things we want to talk about, or is this enough to get us started? And if so, who will, I heard Julie say you'll take a shot at organizing what this might look like. And then should we talk to somebody at the city simultaneously? Or Lou, is that you, or should we talk to the IT person, or what's that?
No, I would create what you want to get out there first, and then we'll get it to the city. I wouldn't do it simultaneously. I would steer through what you're developing.
Okay.
and let them follow back and implement it. It's nothing that we've talked about is difficult to do, and will provide any hurdles that can't be.
Okay. So, yeah, I was just trying to not miss anything on the front end. So would our goal then be that we would have this format all done and a rough idea of how it's going to go out and that we would report out next Thursday?
I would suggest
Sound
that.
good?
Hey,
Is that
Lou,
good?
you seem really familiar with kind of how things work and the process flow and stuff. Do you have any thoughts on, what that should look like in the back end? Like there's probably going to need to be a checkpoint once the information comes in before it goes back out, or I don't know if that's part of what we have to specify when we're asking for help from the city, but is that a clear question? I'm sorry.
Can you, are you looking, can you say it again?
Sure. Let me say it a little better. So we know there's going to be a form, and we've already, or a survey taking place, hopefully hosted by the city, to which we will invite people to fill in their information so that we're collecting this data, right? Once it gets there, we can talk about how to get the link out and all that, but once it comes back, is there a process flow that we need to think about that we haven't talked about yet to make sure that what comes in can be somehow vetted or reviewed appropriately, and then approved, I guess, or maybe slightly edited, whatever needs to be done before it goes back into the desired final product? If there's a process, I just wondered if maybe you had some thoughts on that, because you seem to be really tech savvy and know about that kind of stuff.
Again, the only thing that I would maybe suggest is because each task force is going to be doing their own thing, consolidating that and maybe looking for overlap. Is that what you're kind of looking at on the back?
Yeah, or just what happens to the information once it comes in order to get it posted. What steps have to happen between the time that somebody presses submit in the form and gives us their details and the time that it gets back on the website and, available to the public?
Let me think about that a little bit, because we can automate some of that.
You would want to make sure, though, that somebody's proofreading it prior to it being posted.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that the content is legitimate and appropriate.
Yep.
Exactly. It's like we probably have checkpoints as well as the
Yeah.
publishing process to think about.
Yep. So part of the workflow could be, if somebody enters data in, it goes to, I'll pick on Pat, it goes to Pat for review. Once it's clicked, reviewed, then it goes to its next holding point or consultant.
Exactly. Workflow. That was the word I was looking for.
So are you saying, Lou, you can kind of check into some of that for us, and Julie, you will take a stab at this initial whatever the form is going to look like, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then the rest of us certainly will be waiting to look at those and edit that. But is there any value in thinking about, are we going to make personal connections with these groups? Because all we'd have to do for now then is just divide up those lists, and maybe Jason or Margaret or myself could just take those lists I sent out and just divvy them up, and we could, once we know what we're doing and we have this form, then we just make personal contacts as well. I think the personal contact is a really nice touch. Even if they don't want to participate, we've communicated to them that we know they're there.
Mm-hmm. And it provides them the opportunity that they know, okay, if I have questions in filling this out, I know of a person I can contact.
Okay.
Yep.
So Jason, I know your administrative assistant or somebody at your church created that initial list, and then the one I sent out today, I had just edited and read like how I found contacts or how we were able, that's the list I used to send the survey link. Can you just look at that list and see who you think we should contact and follow up with and kind of divvy that up? And Margaret, could you take a look at the nonprofits and just maybe divide them up? I got that list from Mary Beth Bush from the foundation, and I noticed there were like Oconomowoc Free Clinic isn't on there. There were a couple that weren't on there, but I have a list, and they did respond to the survey, so we must have included them in some other something, or maybe the people themselves went in and then checked off that they were responding as a group. But then I think when we meet next, we will look at these documents and just share this amongst ourselves, and we have to decide how we're going to do that. And then Thursday we'll report out that this is what we are moving forward with, and then we should be able to launch this pretty quickly, I would think, after next Thursday's meeting. Does that sound right? And how will we, go ahead, Jason, sorry.
I was just going to ask, are we contacting people who filled out the first survey, people who didn't, or everybody?
I don't know. What do you think? Some people I know on the, I'm speaking of the church one, I seem to remember because it was a smaller group, easier to remember. I think we asked the question, you know, would you like to be contacted? And some people flat out said, no, not necessary or something. So I don't know. Why don't you, if you have any sense of any of those, why don't you just kind of give us an idea of how we should, I don't know. What do you think?
I like the idea that we would send this survey, this
Yeah.
kind of next step survey to everyone. But in terms of personally reaching out, maybe we just call those that actually had responded to the first one.
Okay.
Even those that said, you know, you don't have to contact me, I think we could still contact them and just say, you know, hey, we've got this additional survey to help with access to your services.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to fill that out?
Promote and share, right?
Mhm.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. So then we'd wait and see what we get back from groups. And we can, you know, we can, with the nonprofit group being much larger, we can see who we're not getting responses from, and maybe we just reach out. We'll just have to manage that after we get this out there.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking then these contacts would happen after we get this information out and it's been out there a little bit, and we see who we start getting things back from. Okay. How are we going to share over the next week? What's
Would it
comfortable?
be okay if I just emailed a reply all to this invite for now? And I'm so sorry, I do need to run.
That's
But
okay.
I'll do that and complete, you know, a document, and everybody can send back their thoughts, and
Perfect.
I can commit to doing that in the next
That'd be
few
great.
days.
I'm good with that. And
Okay.
I will send your link, Margaret, both to you, Julie, for the Facebook, and also to the whole email list that we use for the nonprofits, just to get that and copy you on so you know it's out.
Thanks, everyone. I'm sorry, I'm going to sign off, but I'll
Thanks,
talk to you
Julie.
next week. Okay.
Thank you.
George.
Pat, before we head out, as we were talking, and I looked at the city website in regards to the task force and the specific three tier sectors of the task force. I think it would probably be beneficial to have the scope of focus for each one of our segments of the task force to be on the website. So as people go, they know what we're doing.
Okay.
So as we've talked about what our focus is, what we're doing, what we're not doing, that should probably be out there so people know what the communities, the resident side is doing, the nonprofit side is doing, the business side is doing. It'll probably help clarity and direction of.
So we need kind of a goal, and I think we could write one, but do you think I should work with Bob and the mayor? I mean, it alluded to that in the press release, but it probably needs to be firmed up a little.
Part of the mission statement for us as nonprofit and faith is law. This is what we'll look to us for.
So why don't I try and write that based on what the mayor directed us and anything I have, and I'll get that out to us. So we need kind of a mission statement, which will explain our purpose. Is that what we're saying? Okay. That. And I'm hearing we don't want to get into other issues right now unless, I think we can be pretty fluid. We're small enough, like your example, Margaret, of knowing that. Just let's get that out quickly and send it to folks, you know. So we'll just keep those types of things moving when we all hear of them. And Jason, if you have other thoughts on, you know, faith community, if they're same, different, you know, I think the safety for all of us is if we build it all off of the needs as identified in the survey, then regardless who's offering for that need, whether it's a church, a synagogue, a nonprofit, a whomever, it's based on what we asked our community they needed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think our committee has identified the most practical way we can help people right now. I think we're on the right track.
Okay. All righty. Well, with that said, anything else for the good of the group? And I think we've got our work for the week. Let's get that accomplished and get it out there. And if we can do that, I think I will let Jason know that we'll be, you know, we'll just want them to weigh in on this list, so to speak. But frankly, we all have the same data. I think we can figure it out. I really do. And then just have them put their blessing on it, right?
Sounds good.
Anything else for the group?
Yeah, real quick, committee work can be challenging. So Margaret and Pat, I really appreciate how you're keeping us on point. Super helpful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's a good group. I think we're all dedicated. I know we're all dedicated to the same goal. And if we were in a room with a flip chart or a chalkboard, we'd probably feel differently, but this seems to be working. So thank you for all participating this way. Maybe by our next meeting, we can be an arm's length or a couple arms length apart and meet in person. We'll see what comes next.
Yes.
Sound good?
Yes,
Sounds
yeah.
good. Thank you.
Thank you,
Stay
everybody.
healthy.
Yep, stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.